Hi, this is Stan. Welcome back. Well, I got started working on a jig to build some track panels, but that's actually not what I want to talk about this week. I want to talk about the aluminum rail and its heat expansion rate, because that's important when you're leaving gaps when you lay the track down. So, if that sounds interesting, hope you can join me. So here's a common sight in the summer here in the desert where I live. You can see the concrete has expanded in the heat, and there was not sufficient expansion joints, and so the concrete had to go somewhere, and so it goes up and creates a little temporary hill in the sidewalk. And in the heat of summer in the desert, you can see these all over town. So when we're laying track, we have to take that into account. Heat expansion is something we deal with here in the desert. So I'm using aluminum rail. Here you can see my stash, which hopefully at some point will become a railroad. It's aluminum. I'm not so sure if it's pure aluminum or some sort of an alloy. So what I thought was it would be interesting if I could come up with a formula, that's why I broke out my Excel spreadsheet here, that would tell me how much of a gap to leave depending on the ambient temperature at the time. If I'm laying track in the winter or laying track in the summer, I need to put gaps between the rails where the track panels join so that my rail doesn't kink out and cause problems. This is kind of what I came up with. So the very first thing I had to do was take a measurement. So I took my rail, which is going to be 10-foot sections, and I went out and took a couple of measurements. The temperature got up to 110 ambient temperature, 110 Fahrenheit, and I recorded carefully the length of that track section, 120.125 inches, or 120 and an eighth. So here we have decimal inches and here we have fractional inches. And I was careful to keep my tape measure inside and not let the tape measure be affected by the heat. But I put that 10-foot rail out on the driveway and let it heat up all afternoon and measured it. And then I brought it in the house, and with a ambient temperature of about 80 degrees, I came up with 120.063 inches. So with those two measurements now, I extrapolated what is the expansion per degree of Fahrenheit per 10-foot rail. According to my calculations, 0.002 expansion per degree Fahrenheit of a 10-foot rail, or about 1/500th of an inch, 1/484. So if I'm laying track on the hottest possible temperature, which would be, we'll say, like 120 Fahrenheit, then I wanted to be able to simply type in the ambient temperature and have my formula tell me how much of a gap I need to leave on the rail. So in this case, what's the worst case scenario? That would be 120 Fahrenheit. So theoretically, I would not have to leave a gap in the rail at 120 Fahrenheit. But if I'm laying rail in the winter, we'll say, what was the coldest day? Maybe it was freezing. It rarely gets to freezing here, but sometimes it does. So let's just say 36 degrees Fahrenheit. So I would want to have 3/16 inch of a gap between my rail as I lay the panels if I were laying in the dead of winter. So here, where I live in the Phoenix area in the valley, you could get anywhere from freezing overnight all the way up to 120 degrees in the dead of summer. So that's quite a temperature range, and we need to take that into consideration when laying aluminum rail. Steel rail doesn't expand so much, but aluminum does expand with heat quite noticeably. Let me know what you think of this crazy spreadsheet idea, and to see if your experience agrees with this or not. So here's my gap. Here's the formula, and Excel is able to just convert a decimal inch to a fraction simply if you go under formatting of the cells, and you can tell it to display your answer in fractions or in decimal. So that's the easy part. But I needed a reference point to come up with a per degree Fahrenheit expansion rate per my 10-foot rail. And of course, your calculations might be very different. But if you have a question on this, or if you think this is absolutely the craziest thing you've ever seen, leave a comment below and let me know what you think. Well, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you have a minute, go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know what you're thinking, and I'll see you right here next time.